Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about when players' selflessness erupts at the table, and everything you can, and the opportunities we have as players to improve ourselves and to become more selfless personally. And also, the other thing is I think for dungeon masters to see a deeper facet of our players than we normally see from our friends, because Dungeons and Dragons puts the players who are in our Dungeons and Dragons games in positions that friendships simply don't. Okay, all right. So let's dig into this. I want to tell you an event that happened where I witnessed really a new level of selflessness, which really shocked me, and to tell the truth, and really just gave me a brighter opinion of the person who was at my table. And I had a high opinion of him to begin with, but it really moved me, and I want to share it with you, and I want to talk about the ramifications of it. All right, so I am incredibly blessed to be nearing the end of a 3-season Strixhaven campaign an arc of campaigns, 3 separate arc campaigns. So there was the Strixhaven student campaign. We took player characters all the way through the Strixhaven adventure. It was highly modified from I actually picked up the Strixhaven book. I read it cover to cover. I was incredibly impressed with it, incredibly excited with it. We used the befriended and beloved rules. We used every new mechanic in the book. I used the vast majority of the non-player characters in the book. We used every magic item in the books, but we didn't use, I think I used maybe 25% of the events in the book. And so basically, I allowed the book to let us, land everybody in Strixhaven, but at that point, I didn't need to run any of the little, this happens here and this happens here. It just wasn't needed, right? I did really enjoy reading the adventure because it gave me a sense of, this is what might happen to some player characters, but it didn't need to happen to mine. I had better content than was written in the book, right? Because I know my players better, right? So, and also, I knew, and boy did this happen, I knew the second I put my players into Strixhaven, they would make Strixhaven their own, and they certainly did, right? So here's what happened. So there was this one player character. He is run by my most dedicated player. And dedicated means he shows up. He has everything, right? He has his character sheet. He has his dice. He has a writing utensil. He has every rule book he uses on his phone, and he uses D&D Beyond. And since I'm in one of his campaigns, I actually get access to every book he owns on, which is incredibly generous, right? So even just being a player in my campaign, he's giving me more resources to be able to look at, right? Because there's a few books that he owns on D&D Beyond that I literally don't own on D&D Beyond or physically, right? So it's huge. He's my most dedicated player. I really, I'm so thankful for having him at the table, right? So in the season 1 arc, he got a Chewbacca. He got a Warforged named Glaive, right? And Glaive was the assistant of an evil wizard who came to Strixhaven to claim a book that his grandfather had owned that was now in the Strixhaven Biblioplex, and the player characters defeated him, and he was put into the Sedgemoor Bayou, which is on the Witherbloom campus, in a stasis pod deep in the bayou, right? And he's imprisoned there. But Glaive, who had served him, was an Eberron Warforged, and he switched his loyalty from this evil wizard to Riul. My dedicated player's character is named Riul, and he is an elf artificer of specifically of Prismari, right? So really, really fascinating player character. So they graduate Strixhaven, right? And then they go to Ghost of Saltmarsh. They go to Keoland, and all the player characters become smugglers, right? They align with the traditionalists on Keoland, on Saltmarsh, rather than the loyalists who serve King Scooty. And they became smugglers, and they would just take smuggling routes and bring cargo from one area to another. And so at about so we reached level 14. At this point, I give out a lot of magic items. I give feats and skills as engagement rewards. So I got 14th level characters with more feats and more skills than most tables would even allow, and with a ton of magic items. So my player characters are baller, like they're epic reapers. Like these people, and it's tough because they don't fail anything. And I was getting sick, and I knew I had a problem when one of them was like, well, I'm not going to make that roll because I don't need to make the roll because if I get a 1, I still succeed. And I was like, no, that's not the case. You get a 1, you're going to fail. So we look it up and we found out, yes, the player's right. You get a 1, you succeed, and that's why all the hullabaloo in when D&D is happening right now. So I'm not a scrub DM, right? I said, okay, of course, you show me the rules, yeah, So actually, what happened is they fought on Keoland. They fought a juvenile kraken, right? And the sailors warned them, don't fight this thing, man, because Procan, the god of the sea here in Keoland, where Ghost of Salt Marsh takes place, which is in Greyhawk, right? He protects that juvenile kraken, and if you even scratch it, you're going to bring the wrath of that god. Well, my player girls are like, whatever, we don't, shut it. We're going to shut this thing down, and they did. Well, Procan comes down, and rather than change the rule like some scrub DM would, right? I made a narrative reason. I needed them to start failing on 1s, right? Like if you got a situation where there's no roll needed on a difficult encounter, you got a problem, right? Because there's no drama, right? So now, fortunately, the Dungeon Master Guide fixed this for me already. Rule number 4, and actually, I didn't even need to use rule number 4. I dealt with it in a narrative way. I said, Procan has cursed you. And I actually gave them a card. It said Procan's curse, right? And to every single one of them, right? Every single one of them that raised a hand to the juvenile kraken, and one player character didn't. So they did not have this curse, but all the rest of them did, including Riul, had this curse, Procan's curse. You roll a 1, you fail. Doesn't matter what D20 test you rolled for, you fail. Period. So now I get what I want. The story is stronger, right? And I have not changed a single rule. I'm not just like, oh, I'm a weak dungeon master and I need to change the rules because I can't handle it, right? Like, hey, I'll handle this in a narrative way. I have control of the narrative given to me by the Dungeon Master Guide, and I can do this within the rules of the game, right? And so I did, right? So what really shocked me was we reached a point in the game where immediately the players were like, oh, we got to remove this curse. I'm just going to remove curse. And I said, you sure you want to do that? Right? And they're like, well, yeah, it's no problem. We can remove curse, right? And I said, well, first of all, you just realized that you could remove curse and 2 levels have passed, right? And actually one of them got all excited. He's like, we can remove the curse, right? And I was like, yeah, you can remove the curse, right? But I want you to remember, this was the punishment that the god Procan from Keelan gave you, right? Now, he has delivered his justice, and his justice remains on you. You remove that curse, you will bring his attention back to you. You sure you want to do that? And every player was like, oh, I don't know, man. It was pretty bad the first time. I don't know if I want to bring it again, right? And so none of them, they, even though they had the ability to remove curse, I was able to stop them from doing that, right? Well, one of them, so finally, they came up with a solution that allowed one of them to remove the curse without Procan knowing it, right? And it was Riul, right? And I was like, oh man, this is tough, right? And Riul is my most dedicated player, but he's only my second most skilled mechanical player. There's another player that knows the mechanics of the game slightly better, right? It's like at 90, 100, one has 90% proficiency and one has 95%, proficiency in rules, D&D rules mechanics. It's close, but my dedicated player is not my most mechanical player, right? And so Riul, my dedicated player figures out a way to get, his player character to remove curse, and Procan will not even be aware, right? And I was like, whoa, and I was like, oh well, it was nice, being able to have roles matter again for all the player characters. But what shocked me was the dedicated player said, I'm not. I said, okay, so Riol is now has Procan's curse lifted from him, and congratulations. And I was shocked because my dedicated player said, no, I'm not removing the curse from Riol. I'm removing the curse from Glaive, right? My assistant, right? That's the name for him in the game. The best way to understand him is Chewbacca. He's Riol's Chewbacca. It's the best way to think about it, right? And I was stunned. I couldn't believe it because the reality is that player was about to be up to some shenanigans, and that player is he doesn't. I have a shenanigans player. He was about to put the hurting on me because it is hard controlling these high level characters, and without the ability to fail on one, it's darn near impossible, right? And so I was just like shaking my head. But when he chose to give that major mechanical benefit to Glaive rather than himself, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe how selfless the player was being. And also, I just didn't I always knew that player was kind and tolerant, but I see his wrathful side every week because he just absolutely reaps my non-player characters, like just puts them in the dirt. It's bad, right? But just this selfless aspect of him, I was really, really shocked, right? And I think one of the things that just really amazes me about Dungeons & Dragons is it puts us in these places where we get a huge boon for ourselves. And I think, you give Scott Garibay $250,000, and he going to own a Dodge Viper and a whole bunch of sneakers, right? And I don't know if I'd be as generous as this player was with this benefit, and it really, really surprised me. And so I actually think a lot higher of the player, right, the person, right, now, right, and the reason why is I think if you play a physical table, if you're playing some online game, none of this matters is going to matter, but if you're playing a physical table game, and people are coming over and you learn about them, I really think you see a lot of the true person at the table. You really do, right? It flips the other side. One of the things that we're having problems with is one of my players curses nonstop, right, in their IRL life. I'm an evangelical Christian in my own, now, my son's in high school, but still, I don't like him hearing a whole bunch of curse words. And also, his cursing is infectious to my other players because they put curse in their regular life too. Right? So I don't like a lot of cursing at my table. And actually I'd say beforehand, it's a PG-13 game, and I'm an evangelical Christian. I prefer people not to curse me, and I tell them before. But legit, I have a player who literally can't stop himself, right? And so, and we're working through it, and things are getting better, right? And I'm patient, right? But you really see the good and the bad, and I really think you see a lot of the real person show up at the table, and I was shocked. And I will also say, I think in the old days, you didn't wonder if your friends were going to be there for you. But we live in a different world, man. We live in Putin-Biden world, right? Vladimir Putin is. The New York Times the other day said that he has put a continent into turmoil. A continent. Of course, it's a war in Europe. Of course, there's a continent in it. And Joe Biden is just choosing cowardice over bravery and refuses to engage him and refuses to end this war in Europe in a weekend, which is exactly what America could do, right? We have that ability if we had a president who had a spine, right? And so in this world where, bread and milk, you're wondering if you're going to be able to afford it next week. You're thinking, am I going to be able to be there for my friends? Are my friends going to be able to be there for me? And I was just shocked. I really feel like, this guy is a lot more kind and tolerant than I would ever thought, right? And the other issue is I do struggle. I'm an evangelical Christian, and I expect nothing from my non-saved friends. I truly do. I'm like, when this life ends, you going down, so you better get yours now. You ain't even got it don't even make sense for you to share, right? I'm gonna have eternity, right? And goods for all of eternity. You gonna have this is all you get. This 75 years, you gonna get yours? Yeah, I get it. I get it, right? But when I see, somebody who's not an evangelical Christian like me showing kindness and tolerance in some of the same ways, it really shocked me. And I wanted to share it with you, and I want you keep running your game. Keep running your physical table game. Look for the true person who's in front of you. You will see them. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear. Do you have tales like this? Have you seen this at the table? I'd love to hear your tales. Let me know. Let me know. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.